Okay, here's a question for you. Very important question. Do you have a fear of God? It's a big question, isn't it? Do you have a fear of God? And I'm just going to read this psalm, first of all. It's a quick psalm and it talks about the fear of God. Well, the Psalms are full of quotations about the fear of God, so I've just picked one. And it says this: the angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him, and he delivers them. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man who takes refuge in him. Fear the Lord, you his saints. For those who fear him lack nothing. The lions may go weak and hungry, but those who seek the Lord lack no good thing. Come, my children, listen to me. I will teach you the fear of the Lord. Whoever of you loves life and desires to see many good days, keep your tongue from evil and turn your lips from speaking lies. Turn from evil and do good, seek peace and pursue it. The eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are attentive to their cry. And we're called there, aren't we, to fear the Lord. So that's my question. I just want you to keep that in mind, right? Now, there's a thing now that I've noticed. I've watched a few clips on YouTube and different things like that. There's a phrase that comes out, and it's a derogatory term, really. You know, it's not very complimentary, and it's called virtue signalling. Virtue signalling. I don't know if you've heard about this virtue signalling. Well, virtue signal is somebody who expresses an opinion in public to make themselves look good. So they express this opinion in public, and it might show that they've got, you know, a good character, or they've got a social conscience, or that, you know, it's morally correct what they're saying. And it's called virtue signalling. The worst thing about it, though, is quite often some of these people don't actually believe their opinion. They don't believe the opinion, but they'll say it because it's trendy, it's popular, it might get them something. And it might look good, it might look correct, but isn't that a deception? Something that looks correct. It's not quite correct. Now, I suppose politicians do it all the time. They'll say things that they think people want to hear. You know, and it doesn't matter which party you follow, they all do it. They'll say things, not all the time, but they'll say things what they think people want to hear, which will get them votes. There was a time, I think, could be a while ago, when politicians, or the majority of politicians, actually believed what they stood for. They had a conscience. They had convictions of their own conscience. And they would stand for something, regardless of the votes. They had the convictions. Now, I don't know how much that happens now. I'm not saying all politicians are like that. But there just seems to be a lot of things that come on the telly, you know, a sound bite, and it sounds good to please people. But you can't please everybody, can you? You've got to stand for something. You know, it happens on social media a lot, and on these Twitter accounts, Facebook accounts, TikTok, things like that. People do a lot of virtue signalling, and they support things that necessarily they may not agree with if they looked into them, but because it's popular, it's trendy, and it makes them look good, they'll support it. But there's things that are evil in origin. They're evil in origin. And what I mean is, anything that contradicts the Bible is evil in origin. It comes from Satan himself, from the devil. Now, listen to this. Now, some people will be up in arms about this, but they've got to remember, as a Christian, and as Christians, we're not against people. We're not against people. We want people to be saved. But if we see people going down the wrong path, it's our duty to tell them that they're heading down the wrong path. You know, that they're heading for a lost eternity. If you had a cure for cancer, would you keep it to yourself? You wouldn't. You'd tell people. And I've got a cure for something much worse than that, and that's sin. So listen. These things, they're popular, but they're evil in origin. And I'll tell you what they are. They're LGBTQ+, feminism, Black Lives Matter, evolution, climate change. Ooh, now there's a hint of truth in some of these things, but I'll tell you now, they are evil in origin. We're not against people, we're against. This is what the Bible tells us. Our war is not against people, it's against rulers, authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. And that's what's behind these things. And I'll explain it to you. Marriage is ordained by God. And it's between a man and a woman. Do you know what the purpose of marriage is? To produce children. That's what it says in Genesis. Fill the world and be fruitful. To produce children, that's the purpose of marriage. And only a man and a woman can produce children. Not two men, not two women. Only a man and a woman naturally can produce children. You know when in Genesis, the first chapter of Genesis, it's an account of God making the earth and everything in it in 6 days. And you know what he says after he makes everything? God saw and said, it is good. It is good. Every time he made something, he said, it is good. Evolution is a lie. It's a theory to discount God, to get rid of the whole book of Genesis. And when you get rid of the whole book of Genesis, well, you don't need a man and a woman to get married anymore. Transgender. It's a huge issue, transgender. When God made man in his image, you know what he said? After he'd made everything, he made man on the 6th day. He said, he looked at everything he made, and he said, it is very good. God doesn't make mistakes. You're a man or you're a woman. He doesn't make mistakes. And the problem with the transgender movements is they are pushing young people down this path where there's no return. If they go and have operations, they're mutilated for life. And there's over 1,000 cases now against this Tavistock Centre that did these horrible mutilations of young people. They call it transgender or reassignments. But it's a horrible, irreversible mutilation of young people. God doesn't make a mistake. You know the problem with the transgender as well? These people who are forced into this, the suicide rates for people who are trans is huge. It's one of the biggest in the country. Because there's all sorts of psychological problems that comes along with it. And we need to pray for them. We need to give them an alternative. Do you know that God is in control of the weather? That God controls the climate? That only He can change the climate? It's not man-centered. By banning straws, plastic straws, that's not going to change the climate. Only God can change the climate. He's in control, it's not man. And that's what you've got with climate change. Oh, man can solve this problem. He can't. No politician can. And that's if there is a problem. We're in the last days. Doesn't God tell us in the last days there'll be earthquakes, there'll be famines? Don't be deceived, right, by all these things, all these scaremongering things. You know, all these things oppose the Bible. Sometimes they sound very true and right, don't they? But that's what a deception is. A lie with a hint of truth is still a lie. Don't be deceived. But virtue signaling, this virtue signaling, saying something that you think people want to, it's nothing new. It's nothing new. Remember Pilate? He had Jesus and Barabbas, and the crowd was shouting for Barabbas. Release Barabbas! Crucify Jesus! Pilate wanted to please the crowd, didn't he? He wanted to please the crowd. He found nothing wrong in Jesus. He said it himself. But he washes his hands, doesn't he? Pleases the crowd. Here we got another person like that Herod. He's not the Herod who slaughtered all the babies when Jesus was born. He's the grandson of that Herod. There was a dynasty of Herods, all pretty evil as well. And this Herod, he has James, the brother of John. Now, James and John were the sons of Zebedee, the two fishermen. The sons of thunder, they called them. And James, he has him executed. His head cut off with a sword. And it pleased the Jews. It pleased all those who were against Christianity, the Pharisees, the teachers of the law, and all those people who were against Christians, the ones who probably stoned Stephen, and it pleased them. And because it pleased them, what did Herod do? He arrests Peter. Because that would please him as well. Because remember, Peter and James and John, they were the leaders in the church in Jerusalem. Because of the persecution of Stephen, everybody else had fled by the hills. Don't you know? He's omnipotent. All-powerful. He's omniscient. He knows everything. And he's omnipresent. He's everywhere. He's the creator of heaven and earth and everything in it. He knows everything about us. The hairs on our head, every thought, every